maybe while you're setting up, I can let you know about this really cool Brazilian artist called.
So you went in there and you come out again.
And
that's a problem.
had this huge cloth, like a gigantic 20 metres by 20 metres, and just had little slots in them, and people could just put their heads through, and then they'd walk through the streets of Brazil. I can't remember which city it was, but it looked really, really amazing. And another artist, he made this gigantic Mexican hat with all these head slots in it. So I'm kind of trying to do the same thing, I guess. I'm really interested in the division between like community and individuality. You know, we're kind of all connected when we wear this, but at the same time we're all individual as well. Okay, so just answer some questions. I mean, it'd be really cool if one day I could have a whole bunch of people like moving around just in a park. And it stretches as well, and it's really strong.
You wouldn't want to have eyeglasses on too, so it really has a funny feeling.
Right, okay.
Pictures around your glasses frame, usually.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about your background?
Yes. Okay, so I grew up in Auburn, in Sydney, and I come from a Turkish Muslim background. I do also identify as Muslim today, spiritually, in addition to it being my cultural background. My academic kind of background is in fashion design. I'm the daughter of a tailor, and I was always really interested in fabric and clothing. I actually wore a veil for about 10 years, and often when people hear that, like, or see me without the veil, they think, oh yeah, come on, you know, you're one of the modern ones, or you're a progressive Muslim, you understand how restrictive the veil is, and it's actually really bizarre because I feel really strongly about the veil. It's something that I hold really close to my heart, so it kind of has the opposite effect, but that's my background. Yes.
Are you making fun of Muslim women?
A lot of people ask me that, and they don't ask me that directly, but they'll say, come on, don't they find this offensive? You know, have you actually spoken to Muslim women? And obviously not. I mean, if anything, I'm laughing with Muslim women as opposed to laughing at them, you know. Am I making fun of Muslim women? No. Definitely not. And I'm speaking as a Muslim woman. I mean, compared to the kind of artworks that I've been seeing, especially when I was studying art, going to galleries and seeing all these artists that are, you know, middle-aged, Anglo, white men, you know, doing these paintings about poor Muslim women in Afghanistan. I just thought I had no kind of connection to that. So as a Muslim woman, speaking from my own perspective, not speaking on behalf of all Muslims, but just purely from speaking from my own perspective, I think my work has integrity, and that's a lot more valuable than the kind of representations you see in most galleries and media.
What do other Muslims think about this?
Yeah, so a lot of people think that I mustn't be Muslim for making this kind of thing. Well, yeah, I've spoken to like my family, my cousins, and I've spoken to other Muslim women, and they're definitely, I mean, they're supportive and encouraging. I think integrity is a really important thing when it comes to making artworks of this kind of nature.
It's absurd. Can you talk a little bit about the absurdity in your work?
Yes. It's absurd, definitely. It's meant to be absurd. I see it as an absurd response to an absurd situation. You know, just the thought that at the moment we're in 2012 and Muslims have no legally enforceable rights in New South Wales. So people are free to discriminate against Muslims, and that's in our law. And our legislation also tells us that Jewish people do have rights and Sikh people have rights. So if a Jewish person is discriminated, they can take them to court and go through that process, but Muslims have no rights. I think that's completely absurd. And also the idea that, you know, it's not an idea, it's a fact, there's millions of women around the world that are missing out on an education because the government thinks they're not free enough. You know, they need to take off their veil to become free. That's why we should prevent them from getting an education. I just think that's completely absurd. Like, even if you did think that someone was backward or whatever, obviously the one thing that would take them out of that would be education. And that's the one thing that's being denied. I find that completely absurd.
Where did this
Can I just also add something though? What also interested me was the Dada artists of Berlin, because they, you know, a lot of people know that the Dada artists challenged the notion of art and challenged what the production of art, the idea of the production of art. But they also, Dada artists were responding to the horrors of World War I. So they were using kind of absurd elements in their work to respond to the horrors of war. And I thought that's kind of like a really ingenious way of dealing with the situation through humour.
Where did the concept begin?
The concept began about a year and a half ago. There was a mural, anti-Burqa mural, which I think a lot of people know about. When I saw that, I put in the complaint to the Anti-Discrimination Board, which is when I found out that Muslims have no rights. But more particularly, it was a little bit after that there was a forum in Erskineville, and there was a few people from government talking about the anti-Burqa mural and what they thought about it. And they had a question session at the end, and a guy who was wearing a burqa from the audience, he stood up, he went to the front of the room, and he took off his burqa. And apparently that was meant to be clear evidence that burqas were a security threat, that they were dangerous, and that women could be hiding anything underneath them. So that kind of really made me laugh. Apparently people thought that was such a salient point that it should get onto Today Tonight or A Current Affair. And I just thought it was really funny. So I then started experimenting with putting things under my burqa. But then that kind of project evolved as well, because I am an artist, and you know, whilst making that, I kind of came up with interesting forms, and sometimes it became an aesthetic concern, sometimes it was purely political, sometimes it was conceptual. So it kind of swapped and changed.
What do you mean about our bodies are occupied spaces? Who's occupying it?
Our bodies are definitely occupied spaces. Sometimes it's more literally, like in terms of France or other countries where you can't get an education for wearing a veil. That's like a very literal way of showing that our governments are controlling our bodies. But I guess also in New South Wales, because of the lack of anti-discrimination laws, you can't make choices about your own body and expect an equal opportunity. I've had friends that would go for a job interview at a big company, and they'd ask the manager, if I wanted to wear a veil in the future, how would you take it? And the managers actually said, look, you probably won't get too far if you did decide to wear a veil. So in that sense also, women's bodies are being occupied. You can't make free choices about your body and have an equal opportunity. But also in a social sense, people have all these stereotypes about how a veiled woman or a Muslim woman should be dressing. You know, if you're wearing a veil, why are you wearing a veil? If you're not wearing a veil, why aren't you wearing a veil? Like, it's just socially and with the stereotypes, people have these expectations about how Muslims should dress, act, talk, think, how they should behave. So in that sense, our bodies are occupied as well. We can't freely expect that, you know, why can't someone just expect that I am making a free choice about my own body? Why is it something that I need to justify? I'm just going to have question answers at the end.
Oh, sorry.
Like when I just finish what I... Because there are other answers. That's okay.
Are you trying to copy Christo in drawing?
Yeah, people have asked me that. It was mainly when I was doing this performance. A lady ran up to me and said, I'm an art teacher, are you trying to copy Christo and Jean-Claude? For people that aren't aware, Christo and Jean-Claude is a couple, an artist couple who cover large structures with fabric. And they actually came to Sydney and they covered Little Bay, the island, in fabric. So No, I'm not trying to copy Christo and Jean-Claude, but I'm definitely inspired by them. I think in the sense that I'm drawing viewers' attention to the veil and trying to make them see it in another light. I'm particularly interested in talking about issues related to Muslim women that you don't hear about regularly in the media or in bookshops. I get so frustrated, walking into a bookshop and just finding a million books on the poor Muslim women of Afghanistan or Iran, poor things, let's read about it. It's almost like a fetish. And in that same bookshop, you won't find a single book that's about all these other issues that Muslim women face in terms of their education and all these other things that I've been talking about. So that's really frustrating for me, and I guess through doing these kinds of things, I'm drawing attention to that and getting people to think about it in a different way.
How does it feel under the veil in relation to anxiety?
How does it feel under the veil in relation to anxiety? I don't understand that.
Can I explain more?
Yes, is that yeah? I'm trying to find it.
Because there's a lot of anxieties that people seem to experience in the public when they see a veil.
Yes.
But also, I'm wondering, is there a sense of calm?
Is there a sense of calm?
To be veiled and not under scrutiny.
Oh, okay, well,
Just having to decorate yourself or having to look a certain way. Is that what you mean?
Yeah,
and then having to take that all away. Yeah.
I know women that love dressing up. It does definitely. It's part of your individuality. It becomes your individuality because there's so many different types of veils that you can wear. It's just, yeah. I can't imagine it having any big impact on your sense of individuality. Is that kind of what's the question? What the question is? No.
Probably not well question. Just that, it seems to generate a lot of anxiety. People viewing.
For people looking at,
Yeah, but and I wonder how do you feel in light of that? I suppose we're really
it shouldn't be like that. We live in a society that can't cope with difference, basically.
Yeah.
So, I remember when I used to wear the veil, I was at UTS, and I remember the day after September 11th, and it just felt really, really weird. No one was saying anything, and everyone was talking about September 11th. Then I felt like I needed to say something because they're going to think like I'm a terrorist or like I'm on the terrorist side or something. So I was like, I've got to say something, I can't say anything. And then I kind of said that it's really terrible, but like the moment I opened my mouth, the whole room it was like really quiet, and I kind of said, I think it's really bad what happened. And then I just feel really sad for all those people that died and something along those lines. And then people started talking again. Like it just felt really, really awkward, and no one should have to feel awkward like that, I'm not graduate. Carriage Works is an amazing thing.
I thought we could do a weekend where we could visualise.
Yeah.
Definitely. Just hang around, and I'm going to instruct people in a moment.
Right.
About what's happening. Just have a look at
Yes.